Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them. They never rent quality flicks. They always pick the most intellectually devoid movie on the racks.
And now, on with the show.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net's Loose Cannon, the podcast that is dedicated to some of the dumber selections that you may have found on video store shelves past. Perhaps you can find them on Tubi, perhaps you can find them on Amazon Prime, or wherever, or even the dark corners of the internet where tape trading still happens. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, but I'm not alone as I trek through this caravan of crap. I'm joined by my compatriot in the lovely city of Kitchener,
Alex.
And of course, it is my B-movie connoisseur, my professor of Drek.
Oh, I'm Aaron Pollyea.
So yes, guys, we are finally back here on Loose Cannon. Schedules have finally lined up for all of us to collaborate again. It's just been a really, really, really good day. I'm in a tremendously good mood. Even after watching two of the movies we covered today, one I really liked, and I want to say I'm not biased because of the actor, but it certainly helped. And then the other one was very, very confusing.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there.
Yeah. I'll explain very briefly the genesis of this idea.
Okay, go ahead.
Before we took our winter hiatus, we did an episode on, actually one or two episodes on Rutger Hauer's unknown or lesser known features, where he had this run as an action star in the late 80s. And we found a couple, like Wanted Dead or Alive and that, and we found that they were pretty good. And I went, you know what? Maybe in the future, in our back pocket, we can have some episodes dedicated to the late 80s, maybe even into the early 90s, buddy cop action films that all spawned out of the success of 48 Hours and Lethal Weapon, but that didn't get, like, classic status, or they had to be... My criteria was they had to be released in theaters, they had to have made some money, and they had to have had some notoriety at the time, but that have completely fallen off the radar. Like, these are films that almost never get rerun on TV, even on those endless spins of channels that showed 80s action movies. They just don't seem to show up. And I found a couple, and then after finding a couple, I found a whole bunch more. So we've probably got enough for at least two more episodes we can go through. But for these first two, I went, okay, let's pick a couple films from 1987. So arbitrarily enough, I picked them just because they seem to match up. And also it's the year I was born, so yay me. And the first film, which is the one that we're thinking is kind of weird, is Number One with a Bullet. Now, this is a film directed by Jack Schmidt, starring Robert Carradine, who you probably know best from Revenge of the Nerds, if anything.
Yep. Yeah.
And Billy D. Williams, who you know as Billy D. Williams. I mean, need I say
Billy D. feeling fine.
Yes. But this movie also has Peter Graves, and that's who I kind of know the most out of all.
And Doris Roberts randomly.
But Billy D. Williams is like, you either know him from one of two things. If you're of the generations of us and older, he's from Star Wars, and maybe you consider him the original Harvey Dent in the 80s movies. And if you're younger than that, if you're from like the Gen Z meme generation, you know him for all his Colt 45 commercials that pop up on TikToks and like all the little clips where, what was the line? It works every time. and it would be him like advertising like he's going to go meet a lady, so he picks up a Colt 45 and he's wearing a cape. He's wearing his Lando cape, and he goes, "It works every time."
Every time. Yeah.
So him, Valerie Bertinelli, who you know from a bunch of terrible 80s movies and TV shows.
Hey, she's awesome in the kids baking challenge. I love her, and she was fucking cute in this. My God.
Well, she would have been pretty young. Like, she would have been 25 or 26.
I was about to say, yeah, she's got to be definitely
27,
under 30. Yeah.
And most recently, she was in Hot in Cleveland, which is probably most known for being the last major show that Betty White starred in with her. So you've got that. I'm trying to think other people. Mike Kelty Williamson, he's a character actor that's been in a ton of stuff. He was in, Con Air, Forrest Gump, Bubba Gump.
Mm-hmm. I thought so.
Yeah. There's, and like, again, very young actors getting their starts in here. Peter Graves was the most weird thing to see him in this, right?
Yeah.
And I'll say this before we get into the plot and everything, it made just about $500,000 in theaters, so it counts as being one of our buddy cop movies. and it's a Canon film. And I was trying to see who it was written by. It was written by Americans, but to me, this script felt like it was an ESL script. It felt like somebody because somebody in Israel or somebody over in the Middle East wrote a script in English, or they tried to, of here's what a buddy cop movie has for dialogue. But all the words are right, but the context is wrong, and all the pacing is wrong. Like, it's like they took the first take of everybody's lines and said, that's good enough. And when they went to edit it together, every single line has a 1 or 2 second pause before they move on to the next line.
Can I also say that one of the writers is named Andrew Kurtzman, and I honestly had a little bit of a heart flutter when I saw that, like, just kind of glancing over that, and I'm like, oh god, no, I'm safe.
It's entirely possible it's his dad.
Really?
It's entirely think
It'd
about
be
it.
funny.
It's entirely
time
possible.
period.
I choose to believe so if it's this bad.
I mean, he wrote. This is the same guy that wrote Down Periscope, so.
See, I love that movie.
But what's crazy is that this was also co-written by James Belushi.
Oh.
So you almost wonder, was he supposed to star in it?
I could see that, actually, especially with the one character. Yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Like, did he write the Robert Carradine character for himself, and then Robert Carradine came in and didn't know how to adapt the lines to work with him?
According to rumors online, that is exactly what happened. That Jim Belushi was originally cast as Barzak, and he was replaced by Robert Carradine.
What kind of fucking name is that, by the way?
If you think about it, the way the lines are delivered in this, if Belushi was doing it, it would have made more sense.
Yeah, I could see, because you would get the intonation and the inflection when Carradine does it. It's like he's doing a caricature of a cop. It's so strange. Now, can I just talk about something for just 30 seconds here?
Yes.
Did this movie seem like it just ended just way too friggin' fast? I mean, like, I feel like I looked down at my phone to check my email for literally 10 seconds and it was over.
It's 103 minutes long and feels like 600.
For me, it went by really quickly, but it was so confusing as to what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, it seemed to drag, and then in the last couple minutes, it was just punch you in the face, done.
Yeah, it's like, hey guys, if we don't finish this script in the next 2 days, we're going to shut down the picture. And it shows, because like Alex is saying, with all the line deliveries being really stiff, this must have been a rushed production, or they must have used kids that were fresh out of film school.
I mean, it is canon.
Yeah, like the timing and the quality, we shall say, certainly do match up with what we've come to expect from canon, but it's just, I don't know, something just feels so amateurish about this.
I was going to say, I don't think it's directly on the director either, because this is the director that did Airport 75 and Midway. So he's done a couple bigger pictures that are more important, and he was a veteran of TV, like directing Twilight Zone episodes, and you know what I mean? So it's not like this was a newbie director either. So I'm wondering who had the final edit. Did they throw it because it was produced by Golan and Globus, the two guys from Canon? Did they go in and do the final edit themselves, or have somebody, again, who maybe doesn't speak English as a first language do it? Because their production studio, obviously based out of the States, did employ a lot of Israeli workers. And so who knows? Like something was lost in translation when editing. It's like this 103-minute film could have been edited down to 85 minutes and maybe would have felt tighter with the pacing and the line delivery. Like, there's a lot of pauses. We're going to deliver a funny line, and then we're going to pause for 2 seconds before we react to it. Mm-hmm, it almost felt like, what was that film? Samurai Cop.
Oh
Samurai
my
Cop
god, I
was
forgot
great.
about that.
But Samurai Cop was so bad it was good.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It had that feel, right? Like that.
Yeah, it did.
The line delivery, but obviously a little more competent because a lot of people involved here were professional. They're all professional actors, right? So
Sure.
seeing Doris Roberts was great. But like all the recurring jokes didn't work. Like
Yeah,
his mom calling him just saying, "I'm a very sick woman." Like, or his thing of like, "You got to watch what you eat, buddy," and he's eating like raw pork.
But that, to me, that was funny. What I thought was awful was Barzak constantly cock blocking Billy D. Williams's character.
Yeah, that
Like,
was.
I thought that was awful. It was like funny one time, but then it continues through the entire movie. And,
you know, Aaron, you just made me think of something. I kind of wonder if a script doctor or someone who had the director or writer's ear came up with these zany ideas and they just decided to run with them because they literally had nothing else. Because the whole mom thing, as Alex said, feels weird with the whole constant cock block orama of this movie. You're right. It seems like it's like, okay, this joke works. How many more times can we get away with it and stretch things out?
And all the racist jokes at the beginning too, and the and just the overall the sexist tones. Like it would be funny if it was over the top, but it wasn't. It was all meant to be like, haha, this is normal. And you'd say, oh, it's a different time, but a lot of movies in the 80s handled these sorts of jokes better.
I mean, this is almost like the great value version of Beverly Hills Cop in terms of like, here's a great situation with like drugs and crooked cops and all this other bullshit, but it's just off-brand enough to be off-putting. Like, you're right.
Hey, let's have 5 seconds of silence randomly, and then have Billy D. Williams say, "You make one ugly broad."
Oh yeah, the cross-dressing in this.
Yeah, that was like, that's the one moment that I looked up and my wife was walking through the room. And I'm like, what the fuck am I watching?
Also,
like, so
stop. We're police, and then they just start shooting. Like the cops start shooting.
Well, let me talk about the cross-dressing because, you know, it doesn't make sense in the film. Like, I don't have a problem with men dressing as women or women dressing as men. But, like, in this movie, there's no reason for Robert Carradine to have a big, poofy, like, white blonde wig and a dress and pearl necklace, because it's not like anybody actually would recognize him as a cop in the stakeout that he's on, right?
And he doesn't put any makeup on other than lipstick.
Yeah, and so he's hiding his face in a book, and, like, a guy hits on him. I think her because of the dress and the wig, but
yeah, what he's assuming, what the guy is assuming.
Yeah, and he's like, no, I'm a guy, and the guy like he says something like that's supposed to be funny, and I didn't really think it was funny, but I think it came down to like the gag is that there's a male officer holding a gun at a church gambling night fundraiser, and let's put as many kind of discordant things together in
that scene, and a lot of other scenes in this felt like it was just put in for the sole purpose of Canon to cut together a trailer to sell the movie before it was made, which is something I think, Mike, did you watch that Canon Films documentary?
Yeah. What's it called again?
I forget now.
I think it's Inserts of the Last Action Heroes or something like Loose Cannons.
It's the canon. It's the official canon. I'll look it up. But in that one, they specifically said that this is mid-level canon, right when they were getting towards the end of their run before the early 90s when the company fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I had read and seen that by the mid to late 80s, they started selling movie ideas as if they were already finished before they were finished to then garner money. So they were selling international film rights before the films had even been financed.
Didn't they do that with like Cyborg?
That's what, that and
yeah.
They were trying to do it with Spider-Man.
Yeah, and that's when it fell apart. I believe they used. I
think even Masters of the Universe was caught up in this too.
Yeah, they used to be able to do that with all the Charles Bronson and all the Chuck Norris films, because they knew he was bankable and those films were easy to make. It's when they started to expand into science fiction where it cost more money the returns were better, but they were selling a movie that wasn't going to exist for 2 years and then saying, oh yeah, it'll be out next summer. So I'm wondering if they had this, they're like, okay, we got the guy from Revenge of the Nerds, we've got the guy from Star Wars, and Lethal Weapon is a big hit this year. Can we film a couple scenes? I'll bet you they filmed the scene at the carnival before they filmed anything else in the movie. What can we cut together for a 30-second clip with these actors that we can sell to all of our overseas markets? Ha ha ha, funny guy in a dress as a cop. And
maybe
it's just, it screams to me that they weren't, that the script wasn't planned as they went. And we'll go very quickly into it. It's basically a couple cops are trying to take down a drug ring, and that's it.
Yeah. And there's another thing I think might connect to other canon films in this. This came out, well, like we said, 87. Another really famous canon movie from 87 is Over the Top, and that had a whole bunch of trucks in it.
Yeah, and
this movie has a whole bunch of trucks in it,
and I believe that might be one of the, like, that was one of the most expensive canon films they ever made, because Stallone was Stallone was such a big star that nobody was ever going to expect him to be in a canon film.
Yeah, but it was actually a decent film, if I remember correctly.
It's
like not great, but
no, it's most memorable now, I think, for the montages and the theme song.
Sure,
but because you've got Sammy Hagar doing the theme song, and I mean the ridiculousness of instead of a professional fighting ring, it's a professional arm wrestling ring that he's going to win his son back who's been kidnapped by his grandfather. Like, that's a more fun movie that we could talk about some other time. But yeah, they had a bunch, like 86, 87, 88. They had a ton of these movies come out. Mm-hmm. And this is one I can honestly say I have, before looking for this, I had never, ever heard of. I don't think I ever saw a VHS copy in stores. Nope. I don't think I ever saw it run on local TV. I don't think I ever saw it on cable TV. I don't think it was on Netflix. It apparently had a DVD release, very limited in some country at one point, and it is so out of print that there are multiple copies up on YouTube that have not been taken down for copyright, because I don't know if any of, like, whoever owns Canon's assets, I don't know if they care about this film.
Okay. I mean, maybe it's like you said, you hadn't heard of it. I hadn't heard of it. That's for sure.
Like, Mike, had you ever heard of this or seen the poster?
See, when I looked at the title card and looked at the font that was being, and I know this is going into weird design territory, something about this seemed familiar, but I can't precisely place it where, because I grew up in small town Ontario. Our video stores would get really, really weird shit, but I don't think I ever saw this. But when I saw the poster for this, and I was looking it up on IMDb, it's a little too familiar to say I've never seen it before. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like that case where, like, I've seen that person, but I can't place it where.
I can tell you what it looks like to me.
Okay.
It looks almost identical to the Andy Sedaris posters. It looks like Do or Die, the font.
Maybe actually, it's a similar artist, actually, possibly. Because or maybe it's the same group.
Like, if you had just, on that poster, if you had added a couple girls with giant bazongas, you could have told me that it was part of the Savage Beach series.
And that would have made it far better, because Andy Sedaris would have made a far more entertaining film.
Exactly.
Can that girl who flies the plane come back? Because I really like her. I love those movies.
But oh yeah, they're great. I mean, as it is, looking at the on the Wikipedia page, apparently the Billy D role was supposed to go to Denzel Washington.
He would have delivered it. I mean,
what if it had been Jim Belushi and Denzel? A young Denzel. It
might have worked. Yeah.
Because Billy D was way too old already, even at that point. Like,
he was like in his late 40s easily.
He was 50 when he made this movie. Yeah. And Robert Carradine was like in his 20s.
You know what, though? One of the things that I do love about this movie, like, if it has one redeeming quality, it is Billy D. It's how he delivers his lines, because it's a very fine line between I don't give a fuck. This is a paycheck, and I'm going to have a little bit of fun with it.
Like it's like he read the script and went, "This is terrible," but I'm having fun with Robert. So
yeah, exactly. Like it's like, you know what? It's an easy 30-day film shoot, if that. And he read the script, like you said, once and was like, okay, fine, kid, let's go.
he was probably like, "It's going to theaters. I don't care."
Back end money.
So, I mean, any other final thoughts on that film, or is it? I would say
it's not even worth watching, honestly.
It's not unless you're a big fan of either of those characters, and if it's the case, you can do a quick search on YouTube. There's like 10 different copies.
Yeah,
I'd say it's not bad, but it's not great. So, I mean, you're not. To me, you're not really wasting your time seeing it because it feels like a weird time capsule of a movie, and it has Billy D. Williams, and he does bring a bit of charm to it. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
So now we moved on to the creme de la creme. Here's a film that I knew I had never seen, but the more I think about it, the more I think my parents might have rented this when I was a kid, but I never watched it because I recognized the poster, and there's one little scene in this film that I did recognize, and I'll get to it as we get to it, and that is Shakedown. Now, this is not a Canon film. This is a Universal Pictures full-on big studio release. It cost $6 million, made a little over $10 million. And I am surprised I had never heard of it or seen it because it stars Sam Elliott, Mr. Cowboy himself, and Peter Weller, RoboCop.
Yeah, and to me, that's Buckaroo Banzai, not RoboCop. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And supporting actors. The bad guy, I don't know his name, but to me, he looked like Kiefer Sutherland, and it was like Kiefer Sutherland and somebody else had a love child.
Meatloaf, maybe?
Yes.
Wow.
maybe something like that. But you said, Richard Brooks is in this, supporting actor. John C. McGinley's in it, a young John C. McGinley.
He is, isn't he?
And then a few other people. David Preval plays I guess he's the evidence clerk, who is probably best known. Like, film buffs will know him from Mean Streets, but you would know him, Michael, from
Four Rooms.
David Preval, from The Sopranos. He's the one that married Janice, and then doesn't go well for him.
Yes.
I mean, it's The Sopranos. It didn't go well for anybody. And then, some other actors you see, you're like, oh, I know that guy just by looking at their faces. Now, most notable here, as we're watching it, we'll get into the plot. As I'm watching it, I'm like, this has a very specific feel to it. And I'm like, why do I get this feeling of familiarity? And then I looked it up, and it's directed by James Glickenhaus, who directed that Jackie Chan movie that we loved. The Protector, the one with Danny Aiello, the one where Jackie Chan didn't like it because it had too much gratuitous sex scenes in it and swearing, and we liked it because it had that.
we liked it because, well, it had charm, and I don't know, it was really well filmed. It was really well done.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it, we're probably going to go over some of his other films. He's the director of The Exterminator, which I've always heard of and never actually seen.
Oh, dude, The Exterminator. Yeah, I've seen that many times.
He also directed a movie called The Soldier.
Okay.
And he was the producer of Maniac Cop.
Well,
I love those Maniac Cop movies. They're so dumb.
he produced Frankenhooker.
See, I've seen Frankenhooker many times.
I've only ever seen it once when I was a kid, and I was very confused by what I saw.
And he produced Basket Case 2 and 3. And he hasn't done much in a while, but the one film I've wanted to see forever but never had a chance to, that he directed, his last big theatrical release was McBain with Christopher Walken, Michael Ironside. And that's enough for me to want to see it. So he has that gritty grindhouse 80s style, but for some reason studios gave him a budget for his films. And this is one of the most entertaining movies I've seen in a very long time. I mean, this Shakedown is a lawyer who's burnt out being a public defender, decides to go. He's joining an insurance firm to do insurance law, to get out of the grimy, shitty parts of New York City. And he's got one last case thrown at him, and it's the case of a drug dealer who's accused and accused of murder of a cop, when he says it's self-defense, that the cop tried to rob him, and he believes the guy, and he's going to go on a I guess quest to basically find out, is there corruption within the police force. And Sam Elliott's a semi-burnt out New York cop, but they make a mention that he's originally from Texas, because you can't mistake the cowboy in him. And then they end up having to work together to uncover a big conspiracy within the police force. And there's lots of explosions and shooting and boobs and drugs
and a roller coaster
and roller coasters and music. The roller coaster scene is the scene I remembered. So I know I
that was
seen
great.
All practical effects in this movie, because obviously it had to be. And this has one of the smartest scripts I've seen, and witty dialogue of an 80s movie that wasn't like a huge big hit. I'm actually really surprised this didn't, break out and be this huge big movie.
Yeah, it was good. It was well paced. There's lots of very good action scenes. Like you said, the roller coaster scene, I even wrote down in my notes and underlined it. Like, this was honestly a very good scene. There's lots of good lines in this, like one-liners.
One thing that I really enjoyed about this movie is there's one shot in particular, and it's something that I appreciate as a photographer. Peter Weller's character, Roland, is out near one of the bridges in New York, and it shows a faraway shot of the bridge, and then it racks focus to him. Like, it's a very cliche type of shot, but there's just something about the way Peter Weller's presence is in that moment, where you kind of get his frustration with what's going on. He wants the truth, but what's the truth going to cost him personally? And I get a lot of that projecting into that scene. And then one thing that I do love about this, it's a lot of the supporting cast. The character Richard Brooks, who plays the drug dealer who's accused of the murder of this cop, I know him from Law and Order. He was District Attorney Paul Bissonnette, who worked with Michael Moriarty in the first couple seasons of Law and Order before the big cast change. And when Jill Hennessy came in, help me out with the other guy's name, Alex. The character's name was Jack. It was I can't.
Yeah,
Sam Watterson.
Oh,
Sam Watterson,
who, by the way, is back on the revival of the show.
Oh,
yeah.
Now I'm interested. But yeah,
now it's not very good.
You break my heart.
The quality on the revival of season 21 is not what SVU is. But anyway, yeah, the supporting cast is quite good. This has lines of dialogue and scenes that probably wouldn't fly on most movies now. But
you mean the scene in the car where he describes the big black person as racial slur, gay slur, racial slur?
Oh, that's fine. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the recurring gag that they do at the beginning of the film and at the end of the film, when he walks into the holding cell, and the one cop is bringing out the lunch to everybody. He's like, "Here's your lunch and your condom," and the guy's like, the guy goes, "Why would I want a condom?" And he goes, "Oh, like this New York State government, blah 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 blah, says we got to give a condom out to everybody's blah 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 for whatever reason." And he's like, "You want one?" No. And the big black guy standing next to him goes, "I want one." And then he just stares at the guy.
Yeah, that was uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable, but I laughed so hard because I'm like, you wouldn't do that now. But it's subtle enough. And then at the very end of the film, they basically repeat the same scene over again. It's all the same people in holding. So I mean,
one of the first shots in this movie I thought was fantastic because it set the mood for the movie really well. And I wanted to mention it. It's when they're kind of coming up to look at Sam Elliott's character Richie, and he's in the movie theater, and the guy is just sweeping up piles of freaking crack tubes and crack pipe. I'm like, this is setting the mood. Like, this is how awful the streets are right now. This is the problem that we're all going to face in this movie.
It's that last, like when we saw that movie, what did we watch? Alphabet City. It's that end of the old New York era before the big cleanup. the big cleanup in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s. It's that old grungy New York that, I mean, obviously it exists now, but to that level, that's the vision we used to get when people would show New York City, outside of Manhattan. And did you know there's lots of little meta gags thrown in here? The movie he's watching in the movie theater,
I was going to ask you what that was.
that's The Soldier.
Oh,
Yeah, the one of the other films from the same director. And when he goes outside, one thing they show is one of the movie theaters is showing Charles Bronson's Death Wish 4. And I was like, oh, is this the same studio? No, it's not. So that just might be what they were actually showing that year. But almost every other theater on screen, when he walks by, when they're doing the big long tracking shot of him walking towards, I think to get a hot dog or a coffee, the movie theater behind them is showing The Soldier, which is obviously the one that he saw, as well as The Exterminator. And I think The Protector is shown, and Maniac Cop on another movie theater in the background. You see posters for all these films in different scenes. So it's all like a love letter to the director himself. He's like, because looking at it, every film he had made prior to this had been independently financed and then distributed by indie studios, or in the case of The Protector, it was Warner Brothers, but that was really still an independently financed film. This was his first big break on a big studio picture, so he's like, gotta get all my shit in there so that everybody can rent it on VHS. So little gags like that. The music selection here, I was surprised they could afford all the music they put in here.
Oh yeah,
because for a low budget film, like, it opens up with stuff like Jimi Hendrix, and like it's all there's some like score done here a little bit, but there's like 6 or 7 songs they licensed, and when I looked them up, they weren't all owned by Universal or any of the labels they were with. So it's at a time when you could still get decent songs for a cheap rate to put in the film, and everything suited it quite well. Every character had their own, I don't know, they felt like well fleshed out characters with their own quirks. Like it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's one of the more fun buddy cop movies. I'm trying to think if there's something you could pair it with. Maybe we'll have to see another one. This would actually be something you could pair with The Protector, the Jackie Chan movie. If you wanted to do like a double movie drive-in night, and you wanted to put The Protector on and this one in either order, I think you'd have a pretty fun time, because both have good soundtracks, fun, witty dialogue. They're objects of their time in that some of the jokes wouldn't fly today, but I almost think are more funny now, because I'm like, holy shit, they went there.
Yeah, I loved this movie. I really enjoyed watching it. It drew me in. Peter Weller's always a class act, and Sam Elliott did a fantastic job. So
this lower budget action film happens to have a guy who has a PhD and it's, I think it's either PhD. No, it's not PhD. He's got a PhD in fine arts, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So like you've got like these really, you got him, he's a fancy guy. You got Sam Elliott, who is pretty much only known for playing cowboys. So him in an action movie where he runs around and jumps on the bottom of a plane as it's
with a
taking off,
grenade,
and he blows
like,
it up. He blows it up with a grenade.
Sir, this is crazy. Yeah.
Like, I'm watching it, I'm like, is this a Die Hard movie?
Yeah, that was the one moment I'm watching this. I'm like, this movie's played it so serious, and then randomly, Sam Elliott with a grenade. But there's a fight scene, and a guy pulls like some kind of an SMG, but it's attached to this really weird stock.
Okay, the guy
gun,
the guy in the street that had the 2 machine guns on rails under his arms.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck
I
is
thought
that?
those were like mini Uzis. I thought they were. I might be wrong. But I remember seeing mini Uzis in this movie quite a bit.
He had the rail system that Taxi Driver had, where he snapped his wrist and then the guns flew down his sleeve and he started shooting at everybody.
So yeah, that was very out of place for this movie, but I don't know. But yeah,
the scene where Sam Elliott comes to save him in the evidence room or the interrogation room, which obviously there's no explanation to what the cleanup is. The fact that there's a couple cops murdered inside of the evidence room.
Oh yeah.
But that has, I rewound it about 5 or 6 times. One of the coolest and best shootouts I've ever seen. It happens in about 3 seconds. When he comes in the room and shoots the one guy in the head, you're like, oh, cool. But then there's that shootout right that next second with David Preval's character, and he shoots David Preval. And the way David Preval dies, I've not seen very many shooting deaths, in quotes, in a movie where the reaction of the body language and reaction is as realistic as possible. It's like blood-curdling scream from his mouth, the way his body contorts and turns and falls to the ground. Like, he didn't put his hands up. There's no stunt double. It was the actual actor, the way he landed, and just the blood splatter on the wall was so, the paint, it didn't look like movie prop stuff. It looked like he used like pig's blood or something. So it wasn't that it seemed super out of place. It felt like something you would have seen in one of his Grindhouse movies, but this was a big, relative for the time, big studio picture. And it's worth watching for certain scenes like that. The comedy actually works in this.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
The chemistry between every actor was great, including even like the B plot love story rekindleship / C plot story with his fiance. It all works pretty well. The payoff is good for the whole film, and you could see they were setting it up to do a sequel, and then they didn't end up doing it because it didn't make, they were probably expecting, hey, this is going to make like 40 or 50 million. But this was at a time when a lot of these movies weren't making a ton of money. Like wasn't like Tango and Cash right around the same time too. And that was a big flop for Warner Brothers. Mm-hmm. All these studios, they started to get a little more selective on the action films they made. But this is highly recommended. It's on Blu-ray. So
really?
there's a Blu-ray and DVD of this. And the Blu-ray is, I believe, I'm thinking it's Shout Factory, maybe.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Because I know that they've had a bunch, but I'm just going to do a quick search because this one is one of those ones where there was a DVD, I think like 20 years ago, that went out of print. And then it was reissued. And yeah, the DVD has... The original DVD is going to run you about $16, which is not crazy. And the Blu-ray is from Shout Select. And that's available, but it's pretty bare bones. I don't think there's any special features, but still, it is in print and it looks pretty good. So those are my final thoughts. What about you guys?
I really enjoyed this because the only Peter Weller movies I've seen are RoboCop. He did a movie in the 90s called Screamers. And this is a side of Peter Weller that I've never seen, riding between serious and funny. And just seeing him play off Sam Elliott, I thought was really nice. And there's just that air that Peter Weller brings to every role. It's this very powerful confidence without being cocky. It's the type of guy, if he says he's going to promise you something, you can trust it. And I don't know. I really, really, really like it. There's a fantastic supporting cast in this. It was cool seeing some of these people I know from other movies here. And yeah, this was thoroughly enjoyable. Not the usual cavalcade of bullshit that we cover.
No, yeah, I loved this movie. I thought the plot was realistic and actually was kind of, it had reasonable stakes to it. Like you didn't really know if the guy that shot the cop is really innocent or if he, up until the end, right? Because they don't show you exactly what happened. You just know that there is a question since there was no real witnesses. How can you tell for sure? This is explored in the movie, obviously, but I thought it was a really good setup. There was a good setup. There's consequences to the actions of this mystery being unraveled as well. Yes, there's action in it, but the action is, again, reasonable for an action movie. Most action movies are completely over the top. This was fine. It felt grounded.
It was fine and grounded till the end of Act 3.
Yeah, sure. Then you have like a taxi cab being picked up by a crane to transport over cops. But yeah, and that's silly. That's fair enough. But Mike, if you haven't seen The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai with Peter Weller,
I haven't either. I haven't either. We'll have to do that. Have you seen Leviathan, Mike?
No, I haven't, but it's been on my Amazon Prime watch list for a long time. So
okay, so that's what I saw. I saw that years ago.
That's one of those movies. Buckaroo Banzai is one of those movies I grew up watching. Like once a week for like 2 or 3 years. I love it. I can do all the lines from it. It has Christopher Lloyd in it.
You want to hear something really, really insane?
Hmm.
I have rented that movie about 4 or 5 times from my local video store when I would rent like 5 or 6 movies at a time and never got around to watching it.
Wow. See, I even have the movie poster for that up in my TV room. Like,
Is it unoriginal?
is it original? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, that's cool.
it's its own story. It was made
No,
to seem
I think he means is it an original poster from when it first came out?
Oh, no. I'm sorry. No, it was not. I have a couple things from the production wise from the film that was released at the time, that was only given out at certain movie theaters, just because I am such a geek for this film. See, the way it is, to give like a really brief background on it, it's made to seem like it's a middle chapter to a serial, like an old serial in the past. So, like, you can tell that the characters have all done things previous to this movie, and it's easily set up for a sequel. It's told in the modern day of the time, but it's made out to be a crazy science fiction scenario, but still somehow grounded in reality, even with the craziness that's happening. Like, sir, there's aliens invading, and the president's wondering if we should launch the missiles at Russia right now or wait. Like, it gets crazy, but it's amazing because there are so many people in it. Jeff Goldblum's in it, even. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Well, you've sold me on it.
I'm writing it down on my list of stuff to watch. That, and if we're gonna do that, maybe to make it fit, there's one more. I looked through his whole filmography. There's one more Peter Weller action comedy that he made that wasn't RoboCop or anything like that. It's called 50-50. And it's him and Robert Hayes in a movie directed by Charles Martin Smith, who you'd probably know from The Untouchables. He was was he the accountant or treasury officer with them? Or from American Graffiti, he played Toad.
Okay.
He's probably more known for his directing than his acting, but I know him from a bunch of other stuff. And it says here, they star as 2 army men who meet each other on an island and tend to a mission, but the odds are stacked against them, and they must try to fight their way out. And the poster is them holding a couple shotguns, and there's like 20 guns pointed at them.
Wow.
And it's a Cannon movie from 1993. That might be one of the very last Cannon films. Film was given a theatrical release. Yada yada yada. It was supposed to be a Chuck Norris movie. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. I'll add that to our list of things to watch. We'll put that together with Buckaroo Banzai.
Well, here's an idea, because now we're having more time to do these shows. Why don't we do, as our next episode, guaranteed this time, why don't we do the Peter Weller triple threat? We each pick a movie none of us has seen from his catalog. For example, I've never seen Buckaroo.
Well,
I've never seen 50-50.
It'll have to be the episode after, because we've already got the next episode set.
Oh, what is the next episode, Alex? Tease us.
Dead Heat, which is the buddy cop zombie movie.
Ah, yes, which you can watch on Shudder if you guys are at home. At least in Canada, it's on Shudder.
It should be on Shudder in the States too. I think it's on Tubi as well.
Okay.
And the other film is Running Scared, not the movie from the 2000s with Paul Walker, a buddy cop movie from the 80s starring. Why am I drawing a blank on that? And this is one that I did see years ago. It was made, I think, right after 48 Hours became a big hit, and it is starring Gregory Hines and Billy Crystal. And it made $40 million in theaters.
Wow.
Yet, does anybody remember it existed?
What was it called again?
Running Scared.
What did the poster look like?
It looks like New York City. They're got their arms over each other's shoulders in plain clothes, standing in front of a police car that's been spray painted.
Maybe, but no, maybe.
Dan Hedaya, Jimmy Smits, Stephen Bauer's in it.
Jimmy Smits. Awesome.
Yeah, so it made like $40 million. How did I not know this? Like, I remember seeing this on VHS. I think I rented it once, and then I forgot it existed until I was doing research for this. So this is one that I've seen, and I remember liking now that I think about it, but I don't remember the plot. So I don't think any of us have seen Dead Heat.
No, I've
No.
never seen it.
It's been on my watch list for a while because I heard Zombie Cop Joe Piscopo, and I'm thinking, well, now I'm curious.
Well, yeah, it's the basic premise for that is, let's see here. The film is about LAPD police officer who is murdered while attempting to arrest zombies who have been reanimated by the head of Dante Laboratories. I wonder if that's a thing for Joe Dante, in order to carry out violent armed robberies, and decides to get revenge with the help of his former partner, Treat Williams and Joe Piscopo. And it made $3 or $4 million. This is, I think, like obscure. And the director of this, we're in for something good. Let's see here. What did he do? Direct Dead Heat. The director, that was his first directorial film. He had worked on tons of other films as an actor, usually.
Oh.
Weird. Anyway, still, those to be good. And then after that, we'll see where we go. I did have a couple other things in mind. We could switch it up. There is a buddy cop movie starring Pat Morita and Jay Leno.
What?
Yeah. And it looks super uncomfortable.
Please, I'm so in.
It's called Collision Course. And when I say super uncomfortable, I watched the trailer.
I want to say I've seen that movie.
The movie trailer and TV spot trailer from 1988 or 89 opens with Pat Morita is like I think a Japanese cop who's showing up to stop some sort of. It's basically Rush Hour, the same sort of plot as Rush Hour, right? Only instead of it being more subtle, Jay Leno's first words out of his mouth are, "Hey, I speak Jap."
Oh my god!
And excuse me for saying it. Like, there's no other way to say it than that. And he goes, "Toyota, Suzuki," and he just names cars as the camera sits there staring at him.
Oh my god!
Jesus!
That's how the trailer opened, and then I didn't watch any more of the trailer and went, "This is something we're going to watch."
I apologize to all Japanese people.
Yes, and I fully believe that it was a movie that was buried on purpose afterwards.
Wow.
So it'll be worth watching. Just note that we're going to try to avoid obviously saying racial slurs, but you can't avoid it when it's in the trailer. And it was a green band trailer. They deemed okay for everybody. Even then, that wasn't okay. So there's that, and then the other one is one called Real Men, I think it's called, and it's a buddy cop movie from around the same time, starring Jim Belushi and John Ritter, and it looks equally as terrible.
Okay, wait. John Ritter and John Belushi. Is this having to deal with aliens and a cure for a disease that is plaguing Earth's oceans?
I don't think so. Let me see. Real Men.
Oh my god, I might have seen this movie.
Real Men film. 1987 comedy. James Belushi, John Ritter as the heroes. Suave, womanizing CIA agent Nick Pirandello, and weak and ineffectual insurance agent Bob Wilson. After scientists accidentally spill a deadly chemical into the ocean.
Yep, I've seen this movie.
And it made $1 million.
I've seen this movie many times.
Okay.
Lord.
So is it something we should add to our list?
I think so.
It is not good. It's funny. There are points in it that are funny, but yeah, if I remember it as soon as you started talking about it, yeah, it's obviously memorable in some way, shape, or form.
So maybe good to pair it with Collision Course because we know it's going to be a disaster. Because I'm pretty sure that neither Pat Morita nor Jay Leno ever talked about it ever again.
Likely not.
So yes, that's a glimpse into some things we've got coming up, the order of which is yet to be seen. And then obviously I like your Peter Weller idea. We pick, each pick a film from his triple feature. Then we could talk for 10, 15 minutes on each. That would be great.
Okay, so yeah, folks, so that's what we got coming up on Loose Cannon now that my school schedule's starting to loosen up a little bit and Aaron's more available and Alex is more available. We're going to put out a lot more of these, so expect your local retail shelves of this video store to be stocked a little bit more frequently. So for This Week in Geek's Loose Cannon, we have been
Alex.
And I'm Aaron.
And I've been your friendly video store clerk saying be kind, rewind, and we'll catch you guys again next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Are either one of these any good? Sir,
What?
are either one of these any good?
I don't watch movies.
Quick, change the channel!
You're wasting your life making shit! Nobody cares! These movies are terrible!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
Lower your shields and surrender your listenership. We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.